Hi there, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? It's Tuesday evening. What time is it? It is almost 10 after 5 p.m. here Central Time. And I'm doing a live stream tonight that I hope will be a love stream and offering, wearing my son's shirt, the LRG shirt here. One of them that he left behind that means a lot to me. And I figured I would speak tonight about reversing disease and bringing wellness back into our lives, coming out of dis-ease or lack of ease. We have a lack of ease with ourselves, with the world, maybe with our job and our employer, maybe at school, maybe with coworkers, maybe with our partner from time to time, with our children. You know, many parents are going through a great deal of stress with their young children, starting at, toddler age, with very strong oppositionally defiant behaviors and very perplexing behaviors, which are being categorically labeled as oppositional defiant disorder or any number of neurological issues having to do with brain and the nerve impulses from the spine and the body. It has taken me almost 40 years of doing the work that I do with people just like you, having come through diagnoses myself of sinusitis, asthma, infertility with a primary diagnosis of endometriosis, advanced ovarian carcinoma, and lastly, while I did not go obtain a diagnosis, I'm quite sure that with my son's death and all the stress I was under, unrelenting stress, for almost 4 years, that I likely was under the throes of congestive heart disease. And I'm coming back out of it. Now, it takes day after day really keeping to a rhythm and setting up a plan that adjusts as time goes by. What a health coach or a consultant like myself, a medicine woman, does is that we're with you at least a half an hour a week through the video chat, telehealth, or through the phone. And in the very beginning, what I'm doing is I'm seeing your wellness form on my website at naturallywithkaren.com, where you've listed your preferences, your symptoms, what you're experiencing, what your concerns are, what your priorities are, which may be different than mine once I'm looking at your wellness form. You might say, I don't want to focus on that. I just want to focus on these things. And so what we do is what I do, but what we do together, you and I, and maybe it's a whole team of physicians and me as your consultant and you, is that I'm looking at where can I make upgrades so you can start to get some of these symptoms one by one off your back. For example, I couldn't come on my YouTube channel for quite a while because without sucking on a lozenge, I would get really choked up. I had so much phlegm coming up that when I laid down, I just choked and choked until I wet myself. And I'd never experienced anything like that before in my life. But due to my body getting deeper and deeper into adrenal exhaustion from 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, putting on the funeral events, having to deal with 5 other major life changes, including, the current pandemic, and including needing to remodel and sell my home, including all the changes involving my physical business. I've rented physical business space for almost 18 years through the city of Cloquet with an top-notch reputation. But when I worked with my clients, whether it was stage 3 kidney disease, and I'll speak to some of the testimonials I have on my website at naturallywithkaren.com under testimonials, stage 3 kidney disease, 27 years of lupus, psoriasis covering the body for 31 years, 85% of the body, red and peeling, and many more. Myasthenia gravis, which is another thymus related behind the heart, is the thymus gland related autoimmune disease. So what used to be that just a few people in the 50s and 60s had, had diabetes type 2. Once they got into their 50s, 60s, and 70s, now we see non-IDDM, idiopathic, diabetes type 2, in children, and we're starting to see more and more of a deeper level systemic related to trace elements as well, type 1 diabetes, which is universally spoken about as being completely something you'll never get rid of, and that maybe is not true. And the reason why I say it's maybe not true is because it really depends on how far you're willing to go. Now, if you've ever heard of Dr. Sebi, S-E-B-I, who's not a doctor at all, but who was given honorably and respectfully the title of Dr. Sebi, who did heal people with cases of AIDS, HIV, hepatitis, and all sorts of issues. Most of this was done with food as medicine, detoxification, herbs, plant-based, ocean-based, bladderwrack, Irish moss. Many of these contain life force giving energy, much like the food-based vitamin C that I have used with my clients for many decades now. Oftentimes, when clients came to start working with me, and that one lady had just come out of the hospital, she'd had terrible sores and she had autoimmune, and she thought, I live and eat pretty healthy, and she did for all intents and purposes, but not when it comes to needing to specifically get the body to go into apoptosis, which it does naturally, but it does more efficiently create a state of apoptosis where it's moving out negative cells and methylating and moving toxins out through the channels in the body that are normally there for us to move. First, by making sure that her liver wasn't clogged, which it was. Making sure that her gut was going to be able to take in the nutrients, which it wasn't. She had a leaky gut. Most of my clients were actually unaware of the fact, a medical known fact, that about 80% of people have H. pylori bacterium in their gut. Well, how'd they get that? They got that through eating chicken. They got that through eating factory farmed animals, which we call meat. Now, whether or not you eat meat, a lot of my clients have decided that they want to start eating wild caught meat or very clean sourced, non-factory farmed, free range meat that doesn't have hormones and nitrates. And so I'm here to support my clients in how and what they want to eat, but to help them to optimize it together with finding out if in fact some toxic elements inside of them, which they may have no idea are in there, and inside of most of us today, are interfering with their ability to take in nutrients and make those nutrients work for them. So we talked about 3 of them so far: the leaky gut and the H. pylori in the gut, also categorically known as gut dysbiosis. We've talked about having a liver that's not functioning well. So minerals and toxins and heavy metals start to get stored in there, and it starts to congest with too much cholesterol. Instead of making hormones and doing what it's supposed to do and happily motoring along in your life, your liver's now congested. And you have any number of issues concerning your liver, and of course, the adjunct, which is your gallbladder. And then, of course, the third element that I just mentioned was the trace elements. And it's for this reason that so many people have never, ever heard of hair tissue mineral analysis, although it's been around for 40 years. Although many, many doctors are very, very supportive and use that in their practice in Sedona, Arizona, In the state of Illinois, Dr. Selig, S-E-L-I-G. In many, many, many states, doctors are finding out that because of cadmium, uranium, lead, arsenic, and aluminum that are coming from a variety of sources, our food, our land, our air, our water, our showers, that people are suffering, and instead of just taking a pill to allay or stuff down these symptoms, even doctors like I talked with today as a writer on Quora.com, Karen L. Pringle, with over 2.2 million content views, a doctor said, I had spent $8,000. We just spoke this morning, today, this AM. I had gone to doctors for at least 4 years. I had had every blood test ever known to man. I had a syndrome. We can keep naming political syndrome and agitation syndrome and radiation syndrome and SARS syndrome, and we can keep coming up with all these different syndromes, which are syndromes are a collection of symptoms. Or we can disassemble the problem bit by bit by bit. And people found that when I helped them to make some little twists and turns in their diet, okay, let's get the cranberries in, the real cranberries, not the can. $1 a bag at Aldi's. Let's cook them in some water with a little bit of raw honey. Let's get a teaspoon of raw honey a couple times a day. And this is not a universal one-size-fits-all shoe. So for me, when I was choking, I was using raw honey. For me, when I had thyroid issues because of the extreme stress and the grief and the loss, I was using iodine. I'm also using, because of knowing my particular constitution, L-tyrosine. For some time, as I was coming through and not wanting to enter into toxic grief, I did use GABA and 5-HTP, which are amino acids, which are brain food. So it's my job to know how to use these over-the-counter products that are available to you, to order online, to go to your natural food store, to have someone pick up for you if you're not feeling well, so that you can start to feel a little better and a little better and a little better until eventually clients have come and said, I no longer have this problem. I've gone to my doctor and my kidney function is up so high, I'm no longer in the risk category. Well, how did they do that? After 14 months of working with one client and learning how to use a couple of kitchen implements that hadn't really had a lot of experience with. We've all had a little experience with a blender, but a lot of us haven't had experience with a food processor, or even a little bitty one. You can make some of the most delicious food, pestos and sauces and pâtés and prepping for your soups and things like that. So really, when you get into the swing of learning how to prepare food that takes a minimal amount of time, and you look back to, wait a minute, I was eating a Champ's chicken, I was having pizza on Monday night, I was having pasta on Tuesday, I was having another spaghetti on Thursday night, I was having garlic bread, and all that wheat was congesting people. It was congesting their thyroid. It was harming them. And so when people said, well, give me the proof, I turned them on to doctors like the doctor that wrote the book, Dr. Davis, I think his name is now, I haven't quoted it for a while, on the book called The Wheat Belly. I have invested in reading hundreds of books since 1984. When I turned on my own brain, when I was told that I had severe comprehension issues and I probably just wasn't going to be able to retain and comprehend and read a book, I thought, man, that really is a painful thing to hear, that now I'm going to be kind of a dummy for the rest of my life, And as I've spoken about in other live streams, I really didn't want to accept that. So it really was an act of God or fate or whatever you feel comfortable calling it, that friend I graduated with my first associate's degree at West Valley College in 1989. And in 1988, with a 2-year paralegal certification with an emphasis in family law specialty as a paralegal in 88 and 89. Thereafter, I've gone to 10 to 15 different colleges and universities, no longer chasing the degree, but really seeking out specific coursework like physiological psychology of addiction, like philosophy courses on capitalism and nature. What was going on with our water when I read Mark Reasoner and Cadillac Desert? What were we doing by funding arid desert spaces throughout the Southwest? What were going to be the long-term ramifications of doing things like this within our country? So I looked at the overall picture. How do we become sustainable as an individual as well as a world community? How do we build bridges instead of create more conflict and wars? How do we create wellness instead of simply creating more and more and more drugs and surgeries, radiation and chemical treatments? And I found that not only did I heal from everything I've ever suffered from in life and overcome infertility and overcome ovarian cancer and have it documented, supervised and documented. I went off on my own for 1.5 years despite medical advice. I came back, had my tissue examined. It was cancer-free. They were absolutely aghast. Okay? So over and over and over, with the experience that I've got and looking at the wellness form first, ideally the client orders the hair tissue test. I mail them out the kit right away. We get the hair sample back. It gets sent to the lab. It has to be dealt with a practitioner and not just individuals. Trace Elements, in my mind, is the very, very best lab that I could possibly pick to use for you. Other labs are also wonderful. Some of them have really focused on cleaning the hair and just looking at largely, even though the report is just as comprehensive, but they're more focused on just looking at the toxic elements. I want to look at that calcium level, which is the first one on the trace elements in the blue section, the first graph on your 10 to 12 page patient report. And on the top, it's going to give me your metabolic or oxidative type. So as you eat food, are you breaking down that food very, very slowly? You're not converting it into energy, quickly enough? Is that because your thyroid is very deficient? Looking at the calcium to potassium ratio, these two elements together. Do you have extreme adrenal burnout? Looking at the sodium to potassium. Okay. Looking at other ranges to find out what is going on is very helpful. Even emotionally, when that calcium starts to skyrocket, as mine did, just months after my child died, not even 1 year after my child died, the devastation, the stress of those years of trying to keep him alive, hurting inside, sleep deprivation, to the point that, I was in congestive heart disease. The grief is something that no mother even wants to think about losing their child, let alone experience. And it's one of the most terrifying, terrible experiences anyone can go through in life that I've ever experienced, ever. So my calcium levels, which should have been, at a 42, were up at 171. So my body was already starting to make calcifications. Calcifications because we talk about that when we speak about a calcified pineal gland or heel spurs, bone spurs, which my paternal grandmother had. She had bone spurs on her neck. She had heel spurs on the back of her foot. So since she continued to drink dairy products, and since she was under a great deal of stress being on Xanax for her anxiety in 1981, being an alcoholic, having really huge long-term thyroid deficiency without really ever receiving any help. And I want to speak about that in some following live streams with you about how I discovered that underneath the majority of every more long-term disease was a thyroid deficiency. The body didn't have the energy to keep itself well. So this is precisely why I published my second book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, which you can download immediately and start reading it tonight at naturallywithkaren.com, is I wanted to give you real, viable, workable solutions that you can do on your own. So you can educate yourself about, should I or should I not use iodine? Well, you shouldn't use iodine if you're taking a blood thinner, because iodine thins the blood naturally, not excessively, but we wouldn't want to put the two together. You wouldn't want to just jump onto iodine if you were having a lot of tachycardia, a lot of rapid heartbeat. It may help you, and it may feel overwhelming. So when you work with someone who does the over-the-counter, the wellness part for you that the doctors are not doing right now, what I do, I can't speak about anyone else, is I'm going to get your system to calm down first before we start doing anything, which you can always review with your doctor and see, does this sound like it's safe for me? I encourage you to do that. Okay, we're about 21 minutes, so I don't know if anyone's going to have any questions, but if you're watching this later, put your questions down below. If you're like, whoa, the hair tissue testing sounds really great to me, keep in mind that you're getting a 10 to 12 page report with your metabolism type, slow or fast, slow 1, 2, 3, or 4, fast 1, 2, 3, or 4, and each one of them is taking into consideration that sodium to potassium, that calcium to potassium, and these different ratios, which are telling us about thyroid and adrenals and stress. I'm going to look at your calcium levels. I'm going to help you so that as you start to get these balanced for yourself, you're going to start to feel better and better and better and better step by step. So it might be that you're starting on food-based vitamin C and you're starting on some magnesium, and you're starting by ordering your hair tissue test because you want to get started right away, so you've set up a consult. More and more and more doctors are turning to people like myself who have really, really extensive experience, who have proven results, who have always kept the people safe, who have looked to do the best for people, and who have truly worked with the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. So when we think about reversing disease, what we're doing is we're unwinding one thing at a time. So I met a young man tonight, and I was asking him some questions over at the Speedway convenience store. And he shared with me that he's got diabetes type 2, the simple, more simple version, the non-IDDM. And I said, I've been helping people to reverse type 2 diabetes for over 25 years. It's one of the more, the easier ones. And I said, the one tip I'm going to give you while you're here is cut the weed out of your diet. You want to see big results? I said, but you got to stop and think for a moment. It's in everything, from the Champs chicken coating to the, cinnamon rolls, the honey buns, the little mini donuts, almost everything. When you turn it around and you read the ingredients and it's got the wheat in it, you got to kind of put it away if you want to clear your thyroid and your throat. So there's little steps by little steps. And I mentioned to him and the other two young men that were standing there, I said, do you ever notice, because they were melanated, they were Black Americans, did you ever notice that people are starting to get little patches on their skin? He said, yeah, I've got that too. I've got diabetes and I've got, and I said, vitiligo. He said, yeah, that's it. I've got diabetes and vitiligo. I said, so you're starting to lose patches of your pigment. And pigment is made up out of minerals. So your body is starting to lose its life force energy. Okay. So I hope that this is helpful for someone. And there are steps that you take, little step by little step, where all of a sudden you look in the mirror, you are more radiant, your voice is crystal clear, your hair is growing much faster, your eyesight is better, your energy levels are up, your mood is better, and little by little by little by little by little, we reverse disease. Your doctor can supervise you as you go along. I'm sure they'll have no objection to doing that. Nothing that I do is radical, and all of it is meant to help you. So you have a wonderful evening, and I hope this has been very helpful. Thank you.